My name is Angela Morris, and I live in Boise, Idaho. I'm a 5th grade teacher at a public school just a few blocks from the North End. I'm 39, married, and a mom to 2 kids, David, 13, and Lily, 10. Nothing in my life has ever screamed extraordinary. If anything, it's been mostly routine lesson plans, laundry, PTO meetings, trying to be the kind of mom and wife that Instagram always makes me feel like I'm failing at. But everything changed on February 12, 2024, a date that's now tattooed on my soul. That morning was bitterly cold, even for Idaho. I remember scraping frost off the windshield and thinking how heavy my arms felt. I blamed it on skipping breakfast and drinking too much coffee again. My husband, Tom, kissed me goodbye like always, and I ran late like always. Normal. Mundane. Forgettable. By 10:30 a.m., I was teaching a lesson on ecosystems when the lights in the classroom began to flicker. I thought it was just a power issue, but then I felt an intense pressure in my chest like someone was pushing down on me with both hands, trying to crush the air out of my lungs. My vision blurred. I tried to speak, to call out for help, but no words came. The last thing I remember before slipping away was the panicked look on my student Hopper's face as I fell, my body slamming against the cold tile floor. I later learned I had suffered a massive pulmonary embolism. A blood clot had traveled to my lungs, cutting off oxygen. I was clinically dead for 29 minutes and 11 seconds. The paramedics had almost given up. They were preparing to call the time of death when suddenly, my heart restarted. But what matters more than that medical miracle is what happened while I was gone, because I wasn't unconscious. I wasn't dreaming. I was somewhere else. At first, there was nothing. Just silence. Not the kind of silence we experience on Earth, but something deeper, like existence itself was holding its breath. And then light. But it wasn't light as we know it. It didn't blind me. It enveloped me. It knew me. I was standing, though not with a body, on what felt like the edge of a reality too vast for human understanding. There was no time, no space as we define it. Everything felt alive. The atmosphere buzzed with a kind of love so thick, I could feel it soaking into what I can only call my soul. I didn't see a tunnel. No golden gates or choirs of angels. What I saw was a presence. And that presence was unmistakably holy. It didn't have a face, yet I knew that it was Jesus. He didn't speak with a voice, not like we do. Yet when he said my name, Angela, I felt it echo in every fiber of my being. There was no judgment in his tone, just love. Infinite, perfect love. Love that didn't care how many times I'd skipped morning prayer or yelled at my kids out of exhaustion. Love that didn't flinch at my doubts. I tried to speak, to say something profound, but I didn't need to. He already knew everything I wanted to say. And then he said, I have something to show you. Suddenly, I wasn't standing in that radiant space anymore. I was hovering, watching my life unfold like pages in a book. But this time I could see more than just the actions. I saw the spiritual impact of moments I had long forgotten. I saw myself at the kitchen table, whispering a quick prayer for my daughter Lily before her spelling test. And I watched, stunned, as in the unseen realm, that little prayer unleashed a ripple wave of light that shattered a dark, fortress-like presence surrounding her. A demonic stronghold of fear that had been pressing in on her for weeks collapsed in an instant. My breath caught. I didn't know prayer did that. The next vision came without warning. I was watching myself again, this time in the teacher's lounge, scarfing down a granola bar between grading papers and answering parent emails. I remember that day. I had felt guilty for not praying again. But what stunned me was that even thinking about prayer had agitated the spiritual atmosphere around me. It was as though my very intention to pray had stirred a hornet's nest. Jesus was beside me again, his presence radiant and calm. You've always thought of prayer as something small, optional, something you fit in. But in the spiritual realm, it's the most disruptive force imaginable. As he spoke, I began to see entities, dark, shapeless things scurrying around me. They didn't notice me watching them. I realized I was seeing the spirits assigned to sabotage my life. Not like horror movie demons, but intelligent, calculating beings with strategies. Some were whispering lies of inadequacy, reminding me of every failure as a mother and wife. Others cloaked themselves in distractions, notifications on my phone, mental lists of errands, anything to derail my heart from entering into prayer. I wanted to scream. Then Jesus pointed toward a moment one I had long forgotten. It was the night I had cried in the laundry room, overwhelmed, exhausted, and unsure how I was going to make it through the week. I had barely managed to whisper, "God, help me." Just 3 words. And what I saw next undid me. In the spiritual realm, that whisper exploded like a light bomb. Walls of darkness fell. I saw angels, real angels, not glowing baby cherubs but towering warriors of light charging forward, cutting through enemy lines. That tiny prayer had not only affected me, it protected Tom from a car accident the next day. It covered my son David as he walked through a day filled with temptation at school. I wept. All the times I thought my prayers were weak, useless, ineffective, they had been ripping holes in enemy fortresses. Jesus then showed me something that made my heart sink. I saw the moments I had ignored the prompting to pray. I saw my hand swipe away the Bible app notification. I saw myself choosing to scroll instead of kneel. And in the spirit realm, I saw what didn't happen. Missed breakthroughs. Vulnerable gaps. Chains that could have broken if only I had prayed. But there was no shame in Jesus' eyes. No disappointment. Instead, he said, "Even when you ignored me, I still waited for you. Every time you returned to me in prayer, I was already there." Then came the most soul-shaking part. I was taken to a church, my church, the one I've gone to for years. I saw it not with earthly eyes, but through spiritual sight. The building pulsed with waves of light during worship and prayer. But as the scene shifted, I saw seasons when the prayer had waned. Activities had increased, programs and events filled the schedule, but prayer was relegated to the corners. And in those moments, tiny cracks formed in the spiritual wall's footholds for demonic influence. Not because of evil intent, but because prayer had been replaced by busyness. Jesus turned to me and said something I'll never forget. The enemy doesn't fear your strategies. He fears your prayers. A believer who understands the power of prayer is more dangerous than 1,000 who do not. I saw it again, demons holding urgent meetings, whispering furiously. She's learning. She's starting to pray with understanding. We must stop her. One hissed, send her distractions. Make her feel tired. Flood her mind with good things so she forgets the best thing. But it was too late. I had seen too much. I turned to Jesus, trembling. What do I do now? He smiled, not a smile of amusement, but of fierce love. Tell them. Tell my children what prayer really is. Not duty, not formality. It's the weapon I placed in their hands. Every prayer, even the smallest, crushes the enemy. The scene changed once again, and this time I wasn't alone in the vision. I saw my mother, years younger, kneeling by her bed. She was praying for me. I recognized the moment. I had been 16, rebellious, angry, lost in ways I didn't yet understand. She had cried herself to sleep that night after I screamed at her and stormed out. Jesus said, her prayers never stopped working. What happened next took my breath away. A bright thread of light extended from my mother's prayer, reaching across time, twisting, weaving through years, moments, and milestones I thought I had faced alone. That single prayer had intervened the night I almost gave up on my marriage. It had strengthened me the morning I miscarried my second child and couldn't bring myself to get out of bed. And then I saw another thread, This one coming from a woman I had never met, my grandmother, who died when I was 3. She had been a woman of prayer too, and her words, long buried in time, were still alive in the spirit realm. These prayers had formed a canopy of protection over my family, a fortress of generational faith that demons had repeatedly failed to penetrate. Prayer is not bound by time, Jesus said. It lives beyond the moment, echoing in the eternal. I saw a web of light stretching far into the future, my children, my children's children. And it was being built not with sermons, not with charity or discipline, but with prayers, whispers in the dark, breathless pleas in cars, halting thank yous over dishes. Then Jesus showed me something so intimate, it undid me. It was a scene from just a week before my collapse. I was sitting on the edge of my daughter Lily's bed, stroking her hair as she cried over a cruel comment from a friend. I had whispered, almost without thinking, "Jesus, help her see herself the way you do." That one line, just 10 words, had sent an angelic surge into her room. It shattered a growing stronghold of insecurity that a demon had been nurturing through lies and whispers. I saw that spirit retreat, howling, as Lily slept peacefully. And yet, there were other scenes. Times I had given in to the lies. Times I had believed that unless I had 30 uninterrupted minutes and a glowing spiritual atmosphere, my prayer wouldn't count. I saw how the enemy celebrated those moments, not because I had done evil, but because I had done nothing. In one moment, I saw a demon lean in and whisper, "She's busy. She won't pray tonight." Another replied, "Good. The more tired she feels, the less dangerous she becomes." But every time, even after weeks of spiritual silence, when I returned to prayer, even with a weak, "God, I'm sorry," the demons scattered. They weren't afraid of my voice. They were afraid of his name on my lips. Then Jesus brought me back to the present. We stood in my classroom again, but I could see it differently now. 2 realms overlapped. In the physical, it was just desks and backpacks. But in the spirit, it was a battleground. Spirits loitered around certain children, fear around one, shame around another, anger like smoke clinging to another boy's shoulders. But every time I prayed over that room, even just, "God, give us peace today," light shot out like a beacon. The spirits would recoil, blinded. Angels moved into position. Protection was re-established. "You have authority here, Angela. Because you pray." Jesus leaned in, his gaze locking onto mine with a gravity I can't describe. "Tell them. Tell every weary mother, every doubting father, every exhausted teacher, every lonely soul that no prayer is wasted. Even whispered, even rushed, even broken if it's prayed in faith, it shakes the gates of hell." I could feel it then, the pull of earth, like gravity waking me up. The radiant light around me dimmed, but his presence didn't leave. His final words echoed in my soul as the hospital ceiling snapped into view. "Tell them I'm listening. Always. Even now." The first sound I remember was the beeping. That hollow, repetitive rhythm of a heart monitor, foreign and familiar at the same time. My eyelids fluttered open to white fluorescent lights and the murmur of urgent voices. I was in the ICU. A nurse gasped, "She's back, she's waking up." Later, I would be told what had happened. My heart had stopped. They performed CPR, administered medication, and when nothing worked, they were moments away from declaring time of death. Then, as if someone had flipped a switch, my heart restarted on its own after 29 minutes without oxygen. The doctors used the word miracle cautiously, but their eyes said what their mouths couldn't. I should have had brain damage. I should have had lung complications. But every scan came back normal. Perfect. Whole. But I wasn't the same. I couldn't be. In the quiet of my hospital room, I lay still and stared at the ceiling tiles, my soul echoing with what I had seen. Though I couldn't see the spiritual realm anymore, I knew it was still there, layered over this one like breath over glass. Every time I whispered, "Jesus," I could feel the shift. Not with my eyes, but in my bones. I could sense darkness pulling back. I could feel power move. I didn't need to see it to believe it anymore. Prayer was no longer a spiritual obligation. It was a weapon, a shield, a sword, and a lifeline all in one. It was no longer another thing to add to my day. It was the very thing that sustained it. 2 weeks later, I returned to teaching. The building looked the same: worn tiles, faded posters, the lingering scent of pencil shavings and cafeteria meatloaf. But I wasn't the same. And somehow, the atmosphere felt different too. I arrived an hour early that first day. I walked the halls slowly, deliberately, praying under my breath. Peace in this room. Joy in this hallway. Light in this child's heart. And I did what I saw in my vision. I laid a hand on each desk, praying for the student who would sit there. Some I knew struggled with anger, or loneliness, or fear. But others, I had no idea what they were carrying. It didn't matter. God knew. By the time the bell rang, the room felt warm, not physically, but spiritually. Safe. Claimed. Covered. That afternoon, one of my students, Elijah, came up to me after class. He was shy, quiet, often overlooked. He stood there for a moment before saying, "I don't know why, but today felt different. I didn't feel so scared." My heart nearly broke in gratitude. It wasn't me. It was prayer. It was Jesus. At home, things changed too. Tom and I began praying together, not perfectly, not poetically, but honestly. We'd never really prayed aloud together before. It felt awkward at first, like trying to dance to a song we didn't quite know the steps to. But every time we did it, something shifted. A softness returned. A tenderness. We laughed more. Argued less. Forgave quicker. And the kids. They noticed. Lily asked one night, "Mom, can I pray for our class too?" And just like that, another generation of prayer warriors stepped forward. I began sharing my experience quietly at Bible study, over coffee with friends, in emails to other teachers. Some looked at me like I had imagined it. Others cried as I spoke, something in their spirit resonating with a truth they'd long forgotten. But it didn't matter how people reacted. I knew what I had seen. I had stood in the spiritual battlefield and watched as a whispered Jesus sent legions fleeing. I had seen how tired moms, distracted dads, and disheartened believers were walking around unaware that every prayer they muttered was shaking eternity. So I kept telling the story. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be eloquent. You just have to pray. Hell doesn't tremble at polished phrases, it trembles at sincere faith. It's been months now since I returned from the edge of eternity. The edge of everything I thought I understood. There are days it still feels surreal. I'll be folding laundry, sitting in a parent-teacher meeting, or stuck in traffic, and suddenly, I'll remember what I saw. The armies. The strongholds. The demons who trembled. The angels who stood ready. The presence that called my name. Sometimes it feels like it happened to someone else. But then I pray and I remember. Prayer brings it all back. My days are different now, but not in the dramatic ways people expect. I didn't quit my job. I didn't move to a monastery or become a missionary. I'm still a 5th grade teacher. I still have bills, laundry, soccer games, and grocery lists. But my soul is permanently rewired. Now I see everything layered: physical and spiritual, visible and invisible. When a student lashes out, I see more than misbehavior. I see a heart under siege. When my husband is silent at dinner, I don't jump to irritation, I whisper a prayer, and light pierces the moment. When I feel tired, anxious, distracted, I recognize the strategy. I name it. I pray through it. And every time I say the name Jesus, I feel the tremble in the darkness. One evening, I was tucking Lily into bed. She asked, Mom, do our prayers really change things? I thought of the angels I saw. The fortresses I watched crumble. The ripple of one whispered prayer stretching through decades. I knelt by her bed, took her hand, and said, "They don't just change things. They change everything." I've started keeping a prayer journal now, not as a ritual, but as a record of war. I write down names, moments, impressions. And then later, I write down what God did. I prayed for a colleague whose marriage was unraveling. Weeks later, she came into the lounge in tears. "We talked for the first time without yelling," she said. "It's like something broke." I just smiled. I knew what broke. I prayed for a student battling depression. That week, he asked to join the after-school art club for the first time. "I don't know," he said. "I just feel a little lighter lately." That's what prayer does. Not always instantly. Not always visibly. But prayer moves things. And here's the truth I can't stop telling people. The enemy fears your prayers. Not your schedule. Not your theology. Your prayers. If you've ever felt too weak, too distracted, too broken to pray, you're exactly who he fears the most. Because when a soul like yours dares to whisper Jesus, the darkness has no defense. You don't need the right words. You don't need the perfect atmosphere. You just need to speak his name in faith. Before the experience, I thought prayer was a task, one more thing on the list of things I wasn't doing well enough. Now I know the truth. Prayer is a sword, a key, a hammer, a rescue line. A declaration of war. It doesn't rise from polished hearts. It rises from desperate ones. From weary souls who have nothing left but hope. And that hope. It obliterates darkness. So here I am. Just a woman in Idaho, who died in a classroom and came back with a fire that hasn't gone out. I don't claim to have all the answers. I only have what I saw. What I lived. What I know. And I know this. Every prayer is heard. Every prayer matters. Every time you pray in Jesus' name, hell trembles. So pray. Even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. Because the enemy will do everything to convince you your prayer is weak. But it's only because he knows how strong it truly is.